investing in AI as a way to enhance the work capacity and capabilities is a huge opportunity. There's been a lot of work within the industry to say what is available now that maybe we weren't planning to need for 5 or 10 years.
Today's guest is Kevin Fuller, Critical Environment Operations Manager at Microsoft. With a decade in the U.S. Navy's nuclear propulsion program, he now leads mission-critical data center operations and scaling infrastructure for the future of AI.
Both data centers, nuclear submarine are mission-critical environments. Failure is not an option. Tell me about those standards and procedures. How are they in the Navy? How are they in the data center world?
With data centers, we have very strict, rigorous processes with layers of review, people checking on each other as they go through performance of an operation that is very similar to the way we handle critical system operations in the Navy. Cross industry, safety has to be number one, because if we can't protect our people, then we can't serve our customers.
As we're looking at all of this growth happening in the market, there's much stronger demand for data center capabilities. What do you see as the primary place where data center companies should be investing over the next couple of years?
I would say you can't go wrong with
Paul Koetke is the founder of Koetke Consulting. He helps data center companies build the operational infrastructure to meet exponentially growing capacity demands.
Welcome to the Built to Scale podcast. I am Paul Koetke, and I'm joined today by Kevin Fuller. Kevin spent a decade in the U.S. Navy and has most recently worked as a nuclear propulsion senior program manager for the Navy and transitioned into the civilian world, starting at QTS Data Centers, where he worked as a facilities capital project manager and is now currently at Microsoft as a critical environment operations manager, where he's leading program and business management in support of mechanical and electrical infrastructure projects across Microsoft's Atlanta data centers. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Paul. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Let's jump right into things here. So I'd like to talk a little about your work experience and kind of what has brought you to today. So you started your career and spent a decade in the U.S. Navy. That is a very unique opportunity to start your career and very different than the experience that most people get in the civilian world working in industry. Tell me a little bit about what you learned in the Navy and how you've been able to apply those learnings now working at QTS and Microsoft.
Yeah, definitely. So I went to the Naval Academy straight out of high school, got exposed to a lot of different opportunities. I was really excited to go out and serve my country as an officer in the military. And I ended up in the Submarine Force, which I thought was a really interesting mission set to be involved with. You're going all over the world, operating independently and with a higher level of autonomy than a lot of other platforms, just because of the limits you have on communication being underwater. Stealth aspects of that, like the bad guys don't know where you are, I thought was pretty cool. And so I ended up doing that for a bit over 10 years. And I learned so much about leadership and technology during that time that I found to be applicable, the data center industry in particular, but just the civilian workforce in general. All of the submarines that the U.S. Navy operates are nuclear powered. And so all officers in the submarine force start their training process with a focus on nuclear power plants, how they work, how the Navy uses for propulsion and to generate electricity to keep all the systems on board running. And then the Navy has extremely rigorous processes they use to operate and maintain the nuclear reactors and the supporting systems on. Yeah, go ahead.
Tell me about those processes, because both data centers and a nuclear submarine are mission critical environments. Like, failure is not an option in these. Lots of high tech equipment. With that equipment, it's also, it needs maintenance. It needs to be kept in certain environments. Tell me about those standards and procedures. How are they in the Navy? How are they in the data center world? Do you see a lot of alignment between those two environments?
Yeah, there's a ton of alignment, and I definitely followed a very well-trodden path from the nuclear Navy into the data center industry, because in the Navy, you have stacks and stacks of books and technical manuals that tell you exactly how to operate each system and the troubleshooting paths to follow when you have equipment issues and the process to manage different types of environments because you operate the submarine differently when you're out at sea versus when you're in port and when it's shut down and when the reactor's operating. Kind of level of detail that gets written into the procedures is very high. You've got
And do you have
off
that same level of detail in the data center space as
That's
well?
right. Yeah. So when we're operating and maintaining the mechanical and electrical equipment that support the cloud and other business applications, the margin for error, as you can imagine, is basically zero. We're shooting for uptime that means availability of power and cooling for equipment can only be lost for it's on the order of minutes per year. And so data centers, we have very strict, rigorous processes with layers of review and people checking on each other as they go through performance of an operation that is very similar to the way we handled critical system operations in the Navy.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess, lots of similarities between the job, but you get to go home at night now. I hear the submarines also have the best food in the Navy.
Submarine Force is a small and tight knit community, and you only have about 100 people on board, so the cooks aren't making meals for that many people, and you're all together. So there's definitely a lot of love and dedication that goes into the food preparation, and yeah, I think when you're cooking for 100 people, that you all sleep together within 100 feet of each other. You just get that little bit of extra love and attention that goes into it.
Yeah, got to make it good. So now, I'd like to contrast kind of your roles in industry here. Previously at QTS, you spent a lot of time on the capital project side, so maintaining existing infrastructure, doing the critical maintenance upgrades and things like that. And now in your role at Microsoft, you're doing a lot more on the new construction side. Tell me a little about those two different worlds. What are you seeing between the maintenance and the new construction aspects that are different, and what's similar between those?
I mean, the similarity is definitely the dedication that goes into maintaining uptime for customers. Like that is alongside safety, because across industry, safety has to be number one, because if we can't protect our people, then we can't serve our customers. But alongside safety, maintaining uptime for customers is absolutely essential. And so there's different ways that you have to work through that when you're talking about how you operate an existing data center versus how you bring up a brand new data center. And so that's kind of the contrast between the worlds I've worked in over the last couple of years. So in my last role at QTS, I was working on capital projects where we were figuring out how to replace the major infrastructure equipment that maintains power and cooling for the IT equipment in a large brownfield data center facility. And so that involved a lot of detailed planning to understand how you are keeping an adequate level of power and cooling equipment available while you were replacing other components and portions of the system
You're working
in
on
the
a live
lineup.
system.
That's right. Yeah. So you're
Do
working on a live system.
do you find there's do you, I guess is there a difference for you between the stress and complications of upgrading an existing system where you already have pre-existing infrastructure, you already have something that's there and built that you need to reverse engineer and then improve upon, versus building brand new and having the blank slate to build as needed, but also a little bit of the unknown in that things haven't been proven out over the last 20 years, and hey, we can build it better, but we're also venturing into something new.
Yeah. I mean, was a lot more of developing custom solutions, and you got to kind of figure out what is the right way to manage this particular initial design and the customer base that the systems and equipment are supporting, um, which was very much tailored at the time that the project was being developed 10 or 15 years before. So you got to kind of work with those design decisions that were made a while ago, and how well,
Legacy things in there.
yeah, and how well things have been operated and maintained over the intervening period. Whereas in the work that I'm doing now, as you said, Microsoft is developing its systems and designs and processes very rapidly as we scale around the world. But at the same time, like, it is a very proven design at this point. We're building and establishing similar sites really across the globe, and so there's a lot of I don't want to say it's a cookie cutter process, because things happen, and there are lower order design changes that have to depend on the location and the jurisdiction that you're building in, and that sort of thing. But it's a much more like executing on a proven and established process.
Yeah. And even for those things that do come up where you have to make decisions, I imagine it's been great to have that experience on the capital project side, being the person responsible for making those updates. And now on the new construction, as you're making decisions, be able to have that experience and foresight to say, hey, someone's going to have to deal with this again in 10 or 15 years. What can we do now to make that person's job easier when it does come time to do the maintenance or to replace certain units as needed? I'd like to kind of pivot directions here and talk about the growth of the industry over the last several years and how the AI boom has just put so much more pressure on the data center industry to provide infrastructure, provide capacity. What are you seeing in terms of changes in scalability and use of data centers with this just massive, unprecedented boom in the AI world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of the major players in the industry have had to kind of go back to the drawing board over the last few years. I mean, I think that uh, the way that AI kind of exploded into the world, and grappling with the infrastructure needs of AI and the resource needs that support those infrastructure needs, everybody has had to kind of say, hey, we had this upward trajectory that we were planning to for our business's cloud needs. And then on top of that, we've got these AI systems that need more power and more cooling and more of the GPUs and more locations. And so there's been a lot of work within the industry to say, okay, so what is available now that maybe we weren't planning to need for 5 or 10 years, and what are the possibilities to work with developers and with equipment suppliers,
And so companies are
yeah,
having to get more creative and kind of think out of the box, because what was relatively standard previously is, well, those options are gone, they're taken up. So we need to start looking new places. And that, really starts
absolutely.
pushing into the resource constraints as well too. I know that power and water have been huge ones for data centers as they're looking for new sites, new campuses. There's also been, some community pushback on that too, where people are saying, "Oh, data centers were great," and then actually maybe we're starting to hesitate a little bit here. I know water consumption is pretty big among some data centers, depending on how they're built. You had some really interesting insights to offer around water consumption at data centers. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, thanks. And so first I'll say that water consumption in data centers is primarily used as a way to reduce the electricity that you need to use in order to cool your server equipment. So by using evaporation of water into the atmosphere, that lowers the amount of electrical demand to run compressors for refrigeration systems or to run fans at high speeds for long periods of time. So using water, which the data center industry has over time figured out ways to be more efficient in the way that water is used, so that now with economization and the raising of temperatures in server rooms that's happened over time. A typical data center might use like 10 times less water now than it did 10 or 15 years ago. Water is used to reduce the amount of electricity that you need to pull from the grid to cool your server equipment. And so I think that a lot of different folks are having to figure out ways to come to grips with that. And we need to be really thinking about the data center industry as another set of industrial processes that does use the limited amount of energy and resources that we're able to produce. And so government regulators, utilities, industrial users need to partner together to figure out the best way to use that economically and efficiently.
And so to keep things fair here, not to pick on the data center industry, but a lot of different industries use water. What other sorts of businesses or industries are high water users that you might find around in certain areas that data centers are also operating in?
Yeah, so where in Georgia, um, big industrial water users include like forestry and paper products and manufacturing facilities. Think about around the United States, like golf courses. A golf course over the course of a year might use tens of millions of gallons of water on kind of a similar scale as a modern and efficient data center. And so I think about that in terms of like what's the economic output that you're getting for society based on that water usage. So for a golf course, you may have a few thousand people playing over the course of a year. I was looking at this. You might like play 30,000 rounds of golf on a course in a year, and so that golf course is employing a few dozen people, the grounds crew, the club staff, those types
maybe
of
about
things.
100 people
Sure.
for all the aspects of the golf course. And that's probably
Yeah,
pretty similar to a data center in terms of net employment. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's right. Over the long term, so a data center employs a lot of people for construction, and then once it's built and fully operational, you're down into the several dozen to 100 people that are dedicated to operating and maintaining that facility. And so, but you think about for kind of comparable water usage between a golf course and a data center, the data center is enabling tens of thousands of businesses and millions of people around the world to do the things that the cloud makes possible for their daily lives and their work that are just, I mean, I don't know that we've figured out how to put numbers on the economic output that the cloud is enabling. It's absolutely enormous.
So if we think about, 1 gallon of water and we go out and spray that on a golf course, it probably returns, a couple cents back into the economy. But if we take that same gallon of water and we use it for evaporative cooling on data center, we might be turning back dollars or tens or hundreds of dollars from that gallon of water.
Yeah, I haven't figured out the math behind that, but I would definitely believe it. Yeah.
It's probably maybe higher in the sense category still by a bit. So that's wild. So it's really coming down to how are we using water? Where do we need to divert water to make the most economic benefit and benefit the most people that we can across the board? Sounds like the takeaway here is that we should all start virtual golfing indoors and start building data centers on the golf courses.
There you go. Or, I mean, figure out ways to use solar and nuclear and geothermal to rapidly increase the amount of electricity that we're able to produce, and then you don't need water to run a data center.
There you go. There you go. I'm sure that
Yeah.
comes with other complications as well too.
Oh
But
yeah, that would be a whole nother discussion
it's
for
always
sure.
a balance. But that's really interesting, your insights on water consumption there. Next question I have got for you. As you're looking at this upcoming year, what are you most excited for? I know you're doing a lot of work on the new construction side. What does that look like here for the next year for you?
Yeah, so in the Atlanta area, we have multiple data centers that are in various stages of development, from having been operating for up to a couple years to our construction teams are still just breaking ground on new facilities. So what I'm really excited about is the growth, but also the fact that we're locally kind of getting to our critical mass of the team members that we're hiring and developing, and those folks are like really starting to become experts in their jobs. And so watching those individuals coming in and learning and growing and figuring out the way that we do things, and then also really getting an opportunity now that we're up and running in some areas to focus on how do we go from that crawl to walk to run sort of progression, but then also like once you're running, you want to figure out how to run faster. And
Always getting better.
yeah, that's right. How do we continuously get better over time? That's the stuff that I'm really excited about now that we're kind of progressing into our run stage.
That's really cool to be a part of that journey and seeing both the data centers getting built and then the people developing their skill sets and joining the team and building out that entire group of people that are supporting these sites. That's got to be, really fun transitional period and growth period and inflection point there. I know that you also have been moving around multiple different roles at Microsoft as these opportunities are opening up, and just providing a lot of ability to, never get bored with the same thing and always reaching for that next level.
Yeah, I haven't gotten bored yet, that's for sure.
That's good. Last question I've got for you here. As we're looking at all of this growth happening in the market, these resource capacity constraints hitting, the development in AI, and just this much stronger demand for data center capabilities, what do you see as the primary place where data center companies should be investing over the next couple of years?
I would say you can't go wrong with continuing to invest in people. I think there's a lot of discussion out there about like, hey, is AI going to replace the workforce? Are people going to have jobs in the future? I think that investing in AI as a way to enhance work capacity and capabilities of the individuals that you have on your team, and to identify new things that your team can do that you weren't doing at all before, is a huge opportunity. And I think it's the right way to look at it. And I'm excited about that. Like, we're, in my world, data center operations really only scratching the surface, I think, of what AI is going to allow us to do and be better at in the future. So I think that a lot of people recognize that. I think that's the right way to approach it.
I'm right there with you. I think AI is inevitable for all jobs, and that to be competitive in your role, can be competitive on the job market, for companies to get the most value out of their employees, is to make sure that people are trained up on AI. They know how to use it. I really like what you said about being AI enabled so that people have the tools at their disposal. And I think this is going to be a transformative transition, like what we saw doing things mechanically to moving into the internet area, doing everything on computers. You need to adopt the new technology, but fundamentally, I don't think, or at least I hope, that it's not going to ever completely replace humans, but just give us more capability and more capacity.
Absolutely.
Well, Kevin, thank you very much for hopping on today. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Connect with Paul at koetkeconsulting.com or on LinkedIn. More episodes on the way. Reach out if you're ready to scale.